Howdy, Jakey Stief here, the long-haired freaky dude, and today I'm going to review the novel, The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. This is a remarkable piece of modern literature. I'm not usually a fan of modern novels, but whoo, this was a riveting read. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. It's a very unique and very diverse novel, blending many different genres. It's got adventure, it's got history, it's got mystery, it's got horror, thrill, and gothicism. Really a brilliant combination. But perhaps most notably about this book is that the entire thing is presented solely through letters and journal entries exchanged betwixt the characters. At first I was turned off by this fact, but it really started to grow on me. It goes incredibly well with the theme of the book, as well as the plot. Kostova's decision to use this letter journal mechanism of writing was a brilliant decision on her part. Because it actually makes sense, and it makes the story seem much more believable and much more realistic. Because of this, it's naturally in first person, but not necessarily from the same person, which allows us to see the different perspectives of the characters throughout the book. So we can see what one knew, what one didn't know, etc. And since it's sometimes lost, but later discovered, entries that we read, it really gives you a feeling that you are indeed a character in the book. That you are the next adventurer on this twisted gothic mystery which spans generations. One thing about this perspective which I liked, but nearly killed me with anxiety, is that there are some things and some fates which are never discovered. There's one thing that I really want to talk about, but on the other hand I don't want to spoil it, so I'll say it as vague as I possibly can. What happened to the library? Why didn't you ever find out what became of the library? Why, you sick freak? Why would you give us something so magical and not tell us what happened? Just makes me so angry. I guess that's the point where a teacher voice comes in and says, use your inferencing. Now is normally where I'd give you a brief synopsis of the beginning of the book without spoiling anything, but that's kind of really hard with this example. If I just told you the beginning of the book, well, it'd be mysterious, but then I'd so badly want to tell you the rest of it. The life of an online non-spoiling book reviewer. I mean, there's so much mystery, so much suspense in this book that it seems like even telling that certain mythological theme would spoil it, because you don't exactly know that that's the theme in the beginning. But okay. So we start out reading the account from the primary narrator of the story, a 16-year-old girl and her discovery of a mysterious vellum book in her father's library, which seems to have strong connections to Dracula. You're probably thinking, oh, Dracula, another vampire story. Don't think that. It's bad, because that's far from what this is. Anywho, she then asks her father where this book came from. Where this book came from. Oh, she asks where the book came from. And from there, the entire book unwinds from that one simple question. From there, an entire marvelous mystery is unwound. A riveting journey across Cold War Europe, which will leave your fingers nailless. I actually learned a lot from this book. It weaves in quite a bit of history, mythology, and geography into the plot. This book is essentially the foundation of my knowledge of Eastern European geography. I mean, I knew practically nothing about it before this book, and afterwards I could tell you where all the biggest countries, cities, rivers, regions, mountains, etc. were. It has a dandy little map so you can follow along where the characters go. This is a transcontinental adventure, so if you don't know a lot about this stuff, you will after this. And not to mention, the history, and more specifically the folklore and art history of those places, was just an incredible learning experience. Of course, some things were made up. Just do some fact checking. You'd be surprised what's true, or rather what's believed to be true. Yet another great thing about this novel is how connected you become to the characters. And at the end, I felt connections and affections toward the narrator, the father, and other major characters. You really get to know them throughout this journey. You're stuck with them in a very personal recollection of events. So when you hear these things from their mouths, these things which are quite troubling to discuss, you really gather this bond, this intimacy with these characters, as though y'all are real close friends. It's quite emotional. And you get to know their little mannerisms and such, and it's rather quite charming. Oh, Turgot. I love Turgot. The way I pictured him was just so adorable. And, well, never mind. When it was over, I got really sad and depressed that it was over, knowing that I would never again get to hear the voices and see the faces of my dear friends. It's a traumatic moment when a friend dies, and when you finish the book, friends will die. No, I don't mean killed in the book, I mean the book's over. They are essentially dead even if they survive. It's paradoxically tragic. Woe is the reader! I was incredibly excited to learn that Sony bought movie rights to this book. See, I'm the type of guy who prefers to read the book first, see the movie later, but then I also end up loving the movie. Y'all probably cringe, but it's nice to see a movie after a book. Some parts I'll sure to be disappointed about, but in the end it's really exciting. And I think, if executed properly, this would be an incredible movie. Unfortunately, these rights were bought in 2007, and now it's 2015 and nothing's been done. So sad. Sony, if you're looking for a director, I've got really cheap rates, just saying. A curious thing about this book is that each chapter manages to leave you in suspense. It's quite remarkable that there can be so many good twists and turns. With that said, you will lose sleep. You will read whenever possible, wherever possible. But I want to talk about one specific chapter closer. I won't spoil anything. I just want to talk about some emotions here. How it made me feel. There's some chapter 26, it left me feeling something that I'd never felt while reading a book. Heck, I don't know if I've ever felt it in real life. It was a brand new emotion. How exciting is that? Thanks, Kostova, for being such a great writer that you invented a new emotion. It was like a horrid mixture of chills, anguish, realization, and fright. This is by no means a strict horror novel, but I gotta say, that was the closest I've ever been to being scared while reading a book. Or while living, for that matter, which is odd. But it wasn't exactly scared. It wasn't direct fear. It had that eerie, heart-dropping, stomach, butterflying chill. It was unsettling. It was new, and I loved it. It was quite literally all I could think about for the next few days. But once I was done reading this chapter and I began to get all those feels, it was just so powerful. The twist was so good that it just left me there, sitting on my bed, gazing at what I was feeling. It was really quite magical, almost trance-like. I had intended to reading a few more hours that night, but I was just so aghast that I had to put the book down and just sleep. It was such powerful authorship, and such that I physically couldn't read anymore. It's one thing when a book is so good you can't stop reading, but it's an entirely different thing when a book is so great that you have to stop just to let everything sink in. It's wonderful. Hey kids, don't do drugs, do the historian. That sounds horribly wrong. I'm gonna shut up now. Everything about the historian is fantastic. I can't think of any flaws, none except, why didn't you tell me about the library? I mean, well, even the dust jack is incredibly alluring. It appears old, tethered, mystical, worn throughout strenuous use of previous historians, detectives, and knowledge seekers, like some forbidden vellum-bound world secluded in the darkest region of the restricted section in Hogwarts Library. And we are tempted by that which is forbidden, draws us in. We try to look away at first, but we say we won't start. But then we do! We try one page just to see what all this magnetic pull is about. But by then it's too late, it's far too late. This book was nowhere near the top of my reading list. I had no clue what it was about. I simply bought it because I judged the book by its cover. But every time I glanced at my library, every time I looked at this marvelous bookshelf, this binding always captivated my interest. And finally, I fell into its temptation. With that said, during my time reading this, I had no life. My life was the historian. I spoke to no one. Reality seemed fictitious. The historian seemed real. And I really want you to go on this journey as well. No matter what type of books you read, you will love this one, I guarantee it. Please, for your own sake, read this book, take this ride. I rate this book 10 out of 10 hairs. One of the best novels I've ever read. I could go on, but you probably don't want me to go on, so I'll conclude here now and read the first few paragraphs of this mind-gasmic text, which is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. But before we leave, I have a few questions for you. One, in the spirit of the great conversation, what books do you think inspired the historian, and what books do you think were inspired by the historian, if any? If you haven't read the book, please tell me in the comments below what you think this book is going to be about. Thanks for watching a Bibliophile Productions. If you liked the video, please be sure to hit that awesome thumbs up button down below. And if you want to see more great book reviews or other video content such as cooking tutorials and typewriter tutorials, hit the subscribe button. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please address those in the comments section below. Down there, anything goes. Or you can contact me via one of my many forms of social media, which you can find in the description. If you want to delve further into the world of Jakey, Stief, the long-haired freaky dude, or Mr. Crazy Jake 451, hover over that eye icon right here. And there you can fund this channel for making great content, and you can check out my merchandise, which includes production logos, as well as any artwork that I make. So if you see any artwork in the background, such as a painting or a drawing, and you want it on a t-shirt or a bumper sticker, guess what? You can buy it. How cool is that? Alright, thanks for watching. See you later. Chapter 1. In 1972, when I was 16, young, my father said, to be traveling with him on this diplomatic mission. He preferred to know that I was sitting attentively in class at the International School of Amsterdam. In those days, his foundation was based in Amsterdam, and it had been my home for so long that I had nearly forgotten our early life in the United States. It seems peculiar to me now that I should have been so obedient well into my teens, while the rest of my generation was experimenting with drugs and protesting the imperialist war in Vietnam. But I had been raised in a world so sheltered that it makes my adult life in academia look positively adventurous. To begin with, I was motherless, and the care that my father took of me and had been deepened by a double sense of responsibility, so that he protected me more completely than he might have otherwise. My mother had died when I was a baby, but my father founded the Center for Peace and Democracy. My father never spoke of her and turned quietly away if I asked questions, but I understood very young that this was a topic painful for him to discuss. Instead, he took excellent care of me and himself and provided me with a series of governesses and housekeepers. Money was not an object with him where my upbringing was concerned, although we lived simply enough from day to day.